Once there was a girl named Jen Stone. Jen Stone was pretty average. In her 20s. Just graduated law school, actually, working on getting a job as a lawyer. Very intelligent woman. But one day, gravity decided that it didn't like Jen Stone. Gravity decided that it was time to teach these humans a lesson, and she was going to be the one that it was going to teach the lesson to. So one day, gravity took Jen Stone and stopped working on her quite so much. That was the first step of gravity's cunning plan. Jen Stone walked down the street, attempting to get to her law office, when suddenly she started bouncing up and down, tripping. She couldn't deal with it because gravity just wasn't pulling on her right. After a while, gravity got bored with watching her trip and stumble, pushed her sideways into a wall. Suddenly she was lying flat on the ground, but the ground was the wall. Jen Stone didn't know what to do. "Gravity," said Jen Stone, "what are you doing? What the hell, Gravity?" Gravity cackled. Gravity sneered at her. "Jen, you have displeased me," said Gravity, "you and all of your kind, and therefore I decided that I'm going to mess with you." Jen was angry, but Jen didn't really know what to do about it. So eventually she said, Gravity, I am taking you to court!" Now, a court case against Gravity is hard to arrange. It took almost a month for the court date to arrive, and in the meantime, Jen had to deal with all sorts of problems. She'd wake up in the morning and her bed would be on the ceiling. As soon as she tried to get out, everything would fall onto the floor and break. She took a shower, all the water would actually flow backwards into the nozzle. It was an issue. It was bad. Gravity can do a lot of mean things to a person when it wants to. But finally, the court date rolled around. Now, the judge, his name was Brennan, Judge Brennan. Judge Brennan was well known for having a very harsh record when dealing with laws of nature. The case did not look good for Gravity. It looked like Gravity would probably have to not only fix all the problems happening to Jen Stone, but also probably pay some pretty hefty damages. However, upon commencement of the case, everything in the courtroom became enormously heavy. Now, if a courtroom officer cannot bang his gavel, if the judge or other presiding official can't actually bang the gavel, a little-known New York ordinance states that it's actually not officially in session until the gavel is banged. And therefore, since the gavel was too heavy to lift, let alone bang, it would have broken the wooden pad on the judge's bench, they couldn't start court. It was impossible without banging the gavel. Judge Brennan weakly waved his fist, but only about an inch before it fell back to the ground, and said, Gravity, you stop this right now or I'll hold you in contempt. So Gravity grumbled and let everyone stand back up again. Now the judge banged with his gavel and court began. Jen took the stand, asking herself her own questions, as lawyers who represent themselves are sometimes wont to do. And Jen said that Gravity had been taunting her for almost a month now and wouldn't even explain why, just said it was pissed at humans. After Jen explained the situation and made an impassioned plea to the jury to get Gravity to quit it, the judge said that Jen could call Gravity to the stand. Now, gravity being a law of nature, it can't actually exist in the witness box, but the judge had actually had a mannequin brought in, and this was to represent Gravity in order to make it easier to question. Jen asked the mannequin a variety of questions, including why it was doing this, how, in fact, it was managing to make Gravity affect only her in weird ways, and everything else, as a general rule, was acting normally. Gravity refused to answer any of them. Judge Brennan banged his gavel until his gavel flew away through a window, and for all we know, is still falling sideways out into space. And Gravity eventually came and started inhabiting the mannequin so that it could be asked questions, if only because it knew that it would be held in contempt of court otherwise. Jen asked it questions like, what did I do especially? And Gravity explained she hadn't done anything herself, not particularly. She was just picked as a random representative of the human race. Finally, the judge grew so angry that he stood in his robe and wig. He picked up his wig and flung it to the floor and said, Why have you done this? Gravity, with great anger, replied, Because of Newton! it became clear that gravity was in fact very angry at the human race because of Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton, having not discovered gravity, because you can't really say that you discovered that stuff falls down, but having codified it, written about it, given everyone a good solid name for it that everyone recognized, gravity didn't like that. Gravity wanted to be mysterious. He explained, a little mystery helps you pick up the ladies. If no one quite knows what you are or how you work, it's very sexy. People like that. Now that everyone knows how gravity works, we've got equations for it, they teach it in high school, there's no mystery. He's pedestrian. Old hat. Gravity had no pull with the other laws of nature. You know, neutrinos? Neutrinos were hot. Neutrinos were getting all the babes. Gravity? Nothing. Old fart. He was pissed. He wanted them to recant. He wanted them to wipe all this information out so that he would be mysterious and enigmatic again. Jen tried to negotiate with the judge to see if that could be brought about, but nah, the scientific community wasn't going for it. If Jen was the only one getting bothered, they weren't about to do it. Eventually, the judge actually ruled that gravity had to stop, but that just meant he started doing it when no one was looking. It was pretty useful for Jen's career. The first time the lawyer suddenly flies up and starts speaking to the jury from the ceiling of the courtroom, they get a bit of a reputation, and the celebrity afforded thereby actually allowed her to get some pretty high-profile cases. However, her house and belongings were never in very good condition because, you know, all the gravity warping, stuff tends to fall from large heights that used to be sideways and so on. Gravity never really did recover. His love life was always subpar, just nobody really cared anymore until they invented artificial gravity. Then suddenly gravity was cool again, but that was a few hundred years off. In the meantime, nothing really happened for gravity. Nothing really happened for Jen Stone. So that's been the story for the day. I'll get back to you tomorrow.